Hey superstars, welcome to the Virtus Performance Podcast. We have an epic episode for you guys today, so I will keep this short and sweet. Couldn't you please leave us a review, load up on a 5-star review for us, tell us why you enjoy the podcast, what you got out of it. That would be spectacular. If you have any negative reviews and you haven't liked it, let me know. Give me some feedback. I would love to figure out how I can make this a better listening experience for you. Before we actually get into the episode, I'd like to thank today's guest, Brooke Holmes. She's a wonderful human being and someone who has transformed her life over the last couple of years and become an integral part in many different communities. And I think you guys are going to get a lot out of this episode in terms of belonging and understanding and being seen. Was a big theme, but Brooke's been through some pretty hectic times, some harrowing times, and for us to be able to sit here and have this conversation is a testament to the kind of person she is and is becoming. Let's get stuck straight in. My personal and business goal is to be just a little bit better every day. I believe everyone, especially normal people, have a story to tell. The Virtus podcast exists to help us all find small ways of consistent improvement by discussing the journey and experiences of each of our guests. Brooke, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Lockie. Good to be here.
This is 5 months in the making?
Something like that. It's been a while.
I know, it has. First question for you, before we start diving into everything that is everything. What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, what gets me out of bed in the morning? You know what? I think the answer's probably changed a lot over the last couple of years. But I think if I can be very vague and then be more granular, purpose. I think we all need to have something that's purposeful. If our lives are just about us, in my case anyway, it can lead to your life being a bit sad, but I think once you can connect your life to something else or someone else or a higher purpose, it makes it so much easier to get out of bed in the morning. And for me, I think at the moment my life's purpose is to know people and to be known. So community is a really significant part of what gets me out of bed at the moment. Has that always
Been the way? Has it always been you, or is it something that you've developed over the last few years?
I think I'd like to think of myself as a people person, but I would say I'm probably like borderline introvert, extrovert. But people have always mattered to me, but I think the way that they've mattered has changed. So I would say that most of my teens and probably early 20s, it was more about like what you can gain from relationships, how relationships make you feel. But I would say, my mid to late 20s have been a really significant change in how I view the commodity of what relationships are. And that's been probably one of the significant things in my life thus far.
That's cool. Talk me through that change and like what it was like going through that process and how mindset and feelings differ now compared to then.
Yeah, cool. Jumping straight in.
Oh yeah.
This is awesome. So my mid-20s, as I said, a lot of my late teens to early 20s was about me. It was about what made me feel good, what could I get out of life, how can I make things awesome for me, which was really awesome when things are going well, but when things are kind of stripped away and you've not necessarily got any of that, or people aren't making you feel good, or your job's not making you feel good, or status isn't making you feel good, what's left? What's the substance that's left?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until about my mid-20s where a few things kind of went wrong in life, went a bit not to plan. And so a couple of relationships went pretty bad. I wasn't doing super well just emotionally, wasn't feeling good about myself. There was a whole bunch of other situations that led to me being pretty anxious and pretty depressed, which kind of led to a massive breakdown in about, I think it was 2016. I had a massive breakdown where I literally didn't get out of bed for like a week. Had to have like a significant time off work. And if I can be brutally honest, like didn't want to live anymore. Like life was pretty grim, and I think that there's a whole lot of reasons that led to that moment, but one of them was being really self-absorbed in life being about me and what I was doing or not doing or gaining or not gaining. And, you know, when your focus is so much on yourself, it can be a pretty sad thing. So, yeah, I was super, super depressed, really anxious. There were days where I would struggle to get out of bed, and even if I did get out of bed, I'd, you know, would be exhausted after having a shower. Yeah. Would get ready to go somewhere, get in the car. There was one day I remember driving, I had something on in the city. I got pretty much to Chapel Street and then had a massive panic attack in the car because I couldn't find a car park and drove all the way back. Yeah, so I wasn't in a good way, and anyone that's close to me that was a friend during that time would vouch for how terrible and selfish and really sad I was. But yeah, so significant.
This might be a weird question, but do you look back on that time and those struggles and all the stuff you went through, do you look back on it fondly?
Look, the time itself was horrific. It was horrific for me. It was horrific for my family. I remember having a really awful conversation with my mum and dad. So my mum and dad have already lost a daughter. I had a sister that passed away 3 months old through SIDS, cot death. So everyone get around Red Nose Day in June. So they'd already lost a daughter, and then when I came and kind of had a conversation with them, I was like, I'm not okay, and this is what I'm feeling. I don't want to exist anymore. That's really significant for a parent to hear.
Yeah. What made you want to have that conversation, or what made you actually have that conversation? Was it just like something internal saying I need help, or?
I think for me it's it was not that I didn't want to live anymore. I just didn't know how to, or how to do it well, or in a way that was fulfilling or life-giving or meaningful.
Yeah.
And as much as I would say that during that time I was suicidal, there was only one particular night where I was like, yeah, this is it. And I think for me, having that conversation with, and I had it with my parents and then probably one other person, having that conversation was a way of me going like, this is bad. I need you to know that it's bad. But also, not that cry for help, because it was never about wanting to be saved, but it was about having someone know the depths of the despair that I was in at the time.
Yeah.
And someone that could keep an eye out and keep me accountable and love me through that. Because I think that's one of the biggest things, right? You feel, for me anyway, I felt so alone and so unlovable, and your brain is such a powerful thing that plays so many tricks on you. Yeah. It's like, it's going to tell you all the worst things about yourself, especially when you're in those times of despair.
Yeah.
Especially
when you're by yourself, you get into that, I guess, downward spiral, and it takes a conversation, or at least that little bit of sharing with someone to stop that, or at least pause it, slow it down.
Mm-hmm. Also, someone that can bring truth. For me, truth was so skewed. Like, my truth was so far from actual reality that I needed someone that can call me out on my bullshit. For me, I really value those people. Yeah. And this is probably, again, from that moment, but I really value the people that can be like, Brooke, like, get your shit together and call me out on it, because I can go down a tangent and a path that's really awful, but having those people was such a valuable thing for me. But yeah.
It sounds like a pretty hectic time, and I think so much of our society and so many different people go through things like that to varying degrees and to different levels. What, like, if you could articulate some way what it was like to go, like, to have that panic attack in the car for people that haven't experienced it, or know someone that has experienced it but isn't able to articulate to them. It's obviously a couple of years down the road and you're in a much better place now, which, you know, is a cool, I guess, little reflection points to be able to stop and, we'll talk about what you've done the last few months in a minute, but what advice / how can you articulate what it actually felt like?
It's actually, I find it really hard, and I've watched a bunch of YouTube videos of like people experiencing a panic attack or an anxiety attack, or someone trying to like show visually what it looks like. I find it really hard to articulate because it is so irrational. It makes no sense, and the worst bit is in your brain that it's completely irrational.
Yeah.
But you can't combat that. You can't, in the moment. I couldn't change that thought pattern. For me, it was just like physically, it was like my heart was beating out of my chest like all the time. I felt like people were watching me all the time. I felt very exposed and very vulnerable, but not in the good way, just in the way that was like people could see how much I was struggling. And then your brain is like, as we said, telling you all the things that are terrible about you, that are bad about you, that all of that kind of stuff. It's so hard because you know how irrational it all is, and you know that most of your thoughts and your thought patterns are false and it's not reality, but you can't change it. And it was just such a significant time of just feeling so alone, knowing that other people experiencing it, but just feeling really alone in the middle of it too, because you also don't want to burden other people with how you're feeling. And so for me and my friends, I didn't want to be the sad person in the friendship group. I didn't want to be the person that it's all about them, or it's and so that made me withdraw. But when I withdrew from a community that loved and cared for me, I would get worse, and it's just an awful spiral. There were days where like I couldn't be around my friends, but I have such an incredible friendship group that they would just come over to my house and just sit. Like we didn't have to have a conversation. I didn't want to have a conversation. And if I'm honest with you, I probably didn't even want them there, but they knew what I needed, not what I wanted.
It can be two different things.
Exactly.
What advice would you have for someone going through that? Yeah. Or, that feel like they're starting to go down that path, especially around the withdrawing from friendship groups and not wanting to be a burden, because I think that's one of, I don't know if misconception's the right word, but it's one of those areas where you're not the first person that's articulated like that to me. It's just, I don't want to be a burden. Because I think we forget how much people care sometimes and how readily available they are to, shoulder that burden. So I guess what advice would you have for someone going through that?
I mean, it's really simple. It's just, you need to be able to talk to someone. And I'm not saying that you grab your whole friendship group and you tell them exactly where you're at and you give them everything, but sometimes it's just a conversation to say, hey, I'm struggling. I'm not myself at the moment. I just need you to know that and check in with me every now and then. For me, there was a whole bunch of ways that I kind of got out of that space, and it was probably one of the most significant ways was being in nature. So for me, I find what I connect to. It was as simple as like going to the beach, and I'd get in my car, drive to the beach and be exhausted by the time I got there, but I would just sit on the sand or put my feet in the water and just would feel not everything was okay. It wasn't fixed by putting my feet in the water. I'm not saying that at all, but it took my mind from a space of chaos and into a space of peace for just a moment. And as I continued that was really significant for me. And the other thing was having an attitude of gratitude, which who doesn't love alliteration and cheesy little quotes, but for me that was one of the most significant things. When I started to take my eyes off how I felt, my current situation, what I didn't have, what I didn't achieve, and started to look to the things that I did have, and with an attitude of thankfulness, that's when my mindset started to really change, and I started to experience freedom from the things that were really shackling me and giving me anxiety. But if you are someone that's experiencing depression or anxiety, having a community or at least a person that you can kind of be with and be honest with is really significant.
What was the process like? And this is a super ambiguous question, so take whichever way you want. But what was the process like going from being stuck in bed for a week to this smiling, bubbly person I see sitting in front of me.
I honestly feel like a completely different person. So it's really easy for me to, like, some people are like, oh wow, like you're really vulnerable and brave to talk about, you know, suicide and depression and anxiety. And I'm like, you know, I feel so separate to who that person was in 2016 that it's actually really easy for me to talk about.
Yeah, which is a really powerful thing, because 2016 scheme of things wasn't that long ago.
Really, really close. Like, I don't know. I feel really grateful. Anyway, a lot's happened in that time, but one of the most significant things was probably in that the area of community, and just being able to focus on something that isn't myself. Like, I had a really significant trip planned for end of 2016, 2017, I think it was. End of 2016. And that all fell through for a whole bunch of different reasons, which was really devastating for me. So it was like I experienced this awful time of like depression and anxiety, and then had this awesome trip planned where I was doing, you know, America and Canada. And it was like almost pinning my hopes to this thing.
Yeah.
And it fell through. So it was like, that was a point where I could have either gone back to that place or gone, no, like, I'm using this and I'm moving forward and I'm moving on. And because that trip fell through, that allowed me the opportunity to actually go on a different trip to Kenya in 2017, which was, again, probably the start of the next part of the journey for me. But, it was during that time of...
How'd that come about? Was there a moment when trip one fell through and, like, I don't know if you can pinpoint the moment, but where you kind of remember sitting thinking and going, oh shit, do I react this way or do I react this way? Like, how did all that come about? Yeah,
really significant. So it was almost like that moment. And I knew in myself, I knew that I could allow my emotions and my fears to take over, or I could be like, no, not today. Like, it's not happening. Stick my feet in the ground and be like, onward and upward to better things, and allow this to be something that doesn't break me. Because I think, resilience is such a significant part of being okay. And even when you're not okay, having resilience means that you'll never be broken. You'll never be defeated by the things and the obstacles that come your way. So it was a significant moment of going, no, I'm not going to be broken by this. It's a thing that's happened in my life and it sucks, but no, it's not going to defeat me. And it obviously means that there's something better along the way. Or something new or different for me.
Yeah. Do you think happiness is a choice?
I think it is, yeah. So I would say, happiness, I feel like, is such a, like a fleeting emotion. For me, I want to live a life of joy, which I feel is like a deep, happiness I feel like is that surface level kind of like emotion.
Yeah.
But joy is that deep-seated, like right from your gut, your belly. Your life has purpose, you have meaning, you have connection, and I feel like that is a choice. Joy is a choice.
Yeah.
And I want to choose it every single day. Every single day of my life, I want there to be joy.
Yeah, I like that. Because I think, happiness, joy, like, I feel that about, like, happiness. I feel as though that we have the opportunity that even when, like, I've said it a couple of times, I think, on this podcast, so I apologise to everyone if I'm repeating myself, but I think this is important, that if you have that deep-seated happiness or joy about the opportunities that we have and the perspective and the gratitude and the feelings that we have to actually get to do all these different things, that even when stuff sucks, like it won't suck forever. Yeah. Even when stuff's great and you're rolling and you're happy, there you go, use that word. But even when you're feeling like that, it's not going to last forever. And understanding that and having that acceptance to be like, okay, whatever happens, I'm going to be okay. Yeah. That's that feeling of joy. Just, it's like the foundation for all that for me. Yeah. And I think if you understand that and can accept it and just know that, you know, things are going to happen and it's going to be good and it's going to be bad and you're going to feel good. And, you know, when we look back on all the times when we have our deepest pain and suffering, usually we can look back and go, okay, well, that was an amazing period of personal growth or whatever. So,
and most people I talk to say the same thing. Like, you wouldn't want to experience it again, but you wouldn't change it because that's shaped the next season or it's shaped who you are now. And like, that's my story. I would never want to experience it again. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
But if those things didn't happen, I wouldn't be sitting here being as confident, being as joyful, and being as free as I am right now. So I just would never change it.
Tell me about that first trip to Kenya in 2017.
Yeah, wow. So, after the America trip fell through, it's crazy how this happened, and I still can't even really figure it out. But so my mum has been going to Kenya for about 12 years now. She has her own organisation that takes small groups of people on short-term mission trips to Kenya, to Thailand, and does a bunch of stuff locally as well. So my mum has a massive heart of mercy and wanting to see, social justice and change around the world. Incredible woman. Shout out to Mama Kaz.
Ding.
So she's been doing it for years, and I had it was always really good for her. I remember being like in my teenage years, and she just kind of started doing it, and I'm like, that's really good for you, but it's not for me. And I remember feeling like as if you'd leave your own children to go and spend time with other children around the world. Like, how rude. But
wow, first of all.
I know.
Good.
This goes to show like where my mental state was as an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
But I don't know, something changed in me, and I can't even pinpoint what it was or when it was, but I just knew I wanted to go. I remember hearing all the stories from my mum, and all of a sudden she'd be, doing the Uncle Arthur, showing us the photos on the computer and telling the stories of these kids, and like I would be getting emotional. Like, what are these? Like, what are these tears? These have never happened before.
Yeah.
And then like all of a sudden things just started happening. There was people who wanted to support me to go. And I don't know whether that's because they maybe knew part of the story beforehand and all of that. But people, really wanted me to be there. And as other people wanted me to be there, I wanted to be there more. And all of a sudden, I find myself in October 2017 getting on a plane to go to Kenya.
That's huge.
2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was, the most life-changing experience of my life.
Elaborate on that.
You don't know what to expect. For me, up until that point, I'd been on one overseas trip.
Yeah.
I'd been to America after I graduated high school for a month with my family because they didn't want me to go on schoolies. I had the choice. Mum and Dad were like, cool, you can do schoolies or you can come on a fully paid trip to America. And I was like...
Tactical by them.
So, jumped on the plane and off I went. And it was, again, the most incredible experience of my life. Went to a place called Huruma Childrens Home, which is basically a boarding school for children who are either orphaned or don't have families or don't have safe families. And it's an education facility as well as a home. And spent 2.5 weeks there with, I think there was about 10 of us. Basically did everything from spend time with the kids, listen to their stories, play games with them, kick a footy. We also did some project-based stuff. So we did something called Adopt a Basket, where we filled up about 400 baskets of locally purchased goods, which would feed a small family of 4 for about a month. So we did projects like that on the first trip, and then, it was just incredible. These kids, we talk about resilience. I tell you what, resilience and joy, you won't find more of that in these kids. And these are children that have horrific backgrounds. Obviously, I went back this year and got to spend a bit more time there and heard a whole bunch more stories. But even that first trip, I remember meeting a small girl who is still one of my favourite little legends ever. She, her mum is quite mentally ill, works at the home, and she's there with her 2 sisters, but her mum can't really care for them, so the children live at the home and her mum works there. And so her mum every day will leave the home to go back home and come back and work for the day. And her mum's in a position where she, can't care for them. So they see her, but they're not in that home family relationship and all of the interesting things that brings along. But it was an incredible trip that changed my life and changed the trajectory of the next season of life for me.
Tell me about that next season and how, I guess, because you probably would have experienced the trip, and I guess those kind of trips, it's hard to reflect, especially 2.5 weeks. It's hard to reflect during. What was that period of reflection like when you got home?
Yeah, so I actually didn't come home.
Yeah.
One of the best and hardest things was I had this awesome 2.5 weeks in Kenya, and then I had a trip around the UK and Europe afterwards.
Did you?
Yeah. So I was away for 6 weeks in total, then spent a month travelling afterwards. And so it was weird because everyone talks to you about culture shock. You know, you initially get there and the shock of what you're experiencing and seeing and tasting and smelling and hearing. And then reverse culture shock, which, you know, coming back to your own situation and place of living and that time of processing what you're experiencing. For me, it was really different. I'm an external processor. Like, I figure out how I feel when I'm having a conversation or when I'm journaling or whatever that might look like.
Same.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is my jam. I love this kind of thing. Let's talk about what I've experienced so I can understand me more.
Yeah, good.
But yeah, so I was still in Kenya, and I knew that I was coming back. Like, hadn't even left. I think it was maybe a week in, and I was like, I'm coming back, and I'm going to be here for a significant period of time.
Yeah.
So I had that in the back of my brain. Always knew I was going to be back. But then once I got on the plane, and I was on a plane to Scotland, Edinburgh, it's like, okay, I've experienced what I've experienced. I've seen some of Kenya's most vulnerable young people. I've seen, you know, the Kibera slums where there's over 1 million people living in corrugated iron homes. I've seen, you know, places that don't have access to running water, and the Gong slums where they're living in their trash.
Yeah.
But I've also seen the joy and the resilience of that community. And now I'm a privileged white Australian going to experience the world because I can, you know, like it was really hard for me to consolidate the two parts of my trip.
Yeah.
And I needed to stop viewing them as two parts and view them as one experience.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, was difficult. I was lucky, obviously, with my mum having gone there a fair bit. I was lucky to be able to just continue the conversation with her and debrief with her. But then I was able to use my time, as opposed to feeling really bad about the opportunity that I was given to travel, use that time to really process.
Yeah, because I think that's something that the first thing I thought of was, okay, did you look at that Europe trip as an opportunity, or did you look at it as like, I shouldn't be doing this, and you kind of feel that guilt around it?
Yeah, I initially I thought I was going to, and then I was like, you know what, I've experienced so much in my own life that I can't be robbed of the opportunity that lies here.
Yeah.
Because of how I feel. I can't fix the issues of poverty. I can't fix the issues of social justice, but I can do something. And I always knew that after that first trip to Kenya, my partnership there will be lifelong.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you can't do everything, but you can do something, and that's just how I want to live my life.
I like that a lot. What was the, I guess, planning and subsequent like return home after that 6 weeks?
Yeah.
What was that like? Because obviously you've come back to that life that was not the most stable thing in the world before you left, and you've come back to it with all this newfound sense of, I guess, perspective and understanding of what else is happening in the world. How did that affect how you lived your life when you came back?
Yeah, pretty significantly, I would say. I mean, I probably didn't look that significant from the outside, but internally, like, it was just such a significant change. As I said, I knew while I was still there that I wanted to go back. So I came back, and it was like that night that I was telling my family, I'm going back, and it's going to be for at least 3 months. And so I got back end of November. By the January, I had told both my bosses that I, by the August, would be resigning. Like, I gave them so much notice, but I would resign because this is what I feel like is meant to be. So it was weird having like 8-9 months of notice, knowing that there's this time that I'm going, and yeah, still having to work and save and do all of that kind of thing, but knowing that my heart was like, this is what this season's about. I had something to work towards because I knew I wanted to go back, but there'd be a more significant purpose to the next trip back.
Yeah.
But the day-to-day stuff, it's hard. Like, I came back with, the dirt on my feet from my first trip, and it was almost like the dirt never left. Like, it seeped into my skin.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check that one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
It got into my skin and just never left. The stories, the faces just imprinted onto my heart in a really significant way.
Yeah.
And I get it. Not everyone feels the call to Africa and be with the children, and not everyone feels the call to environmentalism, but we've all got something that we're passionate about. And I think once you find out what that is, that's something that's external to personal gain. That's something that's external to, what I can get out of life. Once we find that thing, I think that is such a significant point in life. And I think, and a significant part about being a well-adjusted adult is that,
having a thing.
Having a thing that's not about you. I think that's such a significant thing. And that is one of the things that I think has changed the trajectory of my life.
Elevator pitch, could you articulate your thing?
You know what? I'm probably not right now. I'm fresh off my second trip.
Yeah.
And I'm still processing, and I don't know. I just, not in a neat, tidy little bow, but for...
Life ain't neat and tidy, so go nuts.
I think for me, my life is about... My thing is about helping people to feel seen and understood and known and valued. People did that for me when I was in my moments of depression and anxiety, and I think when we're vulnerable, we just want to feel known, and it doesn't get more vulnerable than orphans and widows.
Yeah.
And that's my thing. I just want people to know, people around the world, to know that they're valued and seen, especially with, these kids with the stories that they have. They're important, they matter, and everyone should be given the opportunities that we have. Education, so significant, but I want people to know that they're valued.
How is that thing different to what it would have been if I asked you, say, 5 years ago?
It would have been about how I can feel seen and understood. I felt so misunderstood, in my early 20s, late teens. It was all about how I could get people to understand my perspective and who I am. And I'm still figuring that out. I would say now more than ever, I know who I am. I know how I'm wired, and I'm not only that, but I'm confident in that. That's probably been flipped on its head. As you continue to take your eyes off yourself, you kind of see the needs of the world and the needs of people around you. And it puts things into perspective sometimes. We all need a healthy dose of humility, and, we might be the centre of our own world, but we're not the centre of the world. And there are people that have greater needs and greater struggles than us. And it doesn't lessen what we experience. It doesn't lessen our own needs and desires and experiences.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to understand that it is all relative. Like all of the struggle and the suffering that we all go through. Just there's horrific, and then there's what some people would see as a regular struggle, but we all experience it as the worst thing we've been through potentially, 100%. or whatever. So I think it's really important to understand that, and I think having been, I've never experienced one big chunk in a single community, but being fortunate enough to travel different parts of the world, really, really low socioeconomic areas, and to see how people live and to see the contrast in terms of opportunity and, I guess, materialistic possessions compared to what we have here, but then to see the contrast in happiness and smiles and joy and appreciation for what they do have. It's so, I don't know, it's one of those things that it really interests me, and it's really easy to forget that there's that, there's those other parts of the world where people are going through those things.
And I think too, like, one of the questions I get asked a lot is, were you sad for them? No, I was sad for myself. Like, the tears that I was crying when I was there, yes, there are horrific stories and all of that, but I wasn't crying because they're lacking. I come back here and I feel sad for us. I feel sad for the things that we've prioritized and the things that, we think will bring us joy and fulfillment. And it's just, the Western way of living is so different. I don't feel sad for them at all. I look at their lives and I look at the community that they have. It's so deep and rich, and the joy that they experience and the faith that they have, and the hope that they have despite situations, and as a result the resilience that they have. And I'm like, we could all use a dose of that. We could all use a dose of that.
Yeah, I think it's important. Like, that resilience comes from experiencing some horrific things, and comes from being able to develop coping mechanisms as they grow and as they go older. And I think for you to be able to, I guess, dive into that community and hear the stories and experience it through their voices and through their eyes, it's a pretty powerful thing. What are the obviously there'd be thousands of stories, but what are there some stories that stick out that you'd be able to share their experiences through your experience?
Yeah. Again, there's a lot of stories, and to be honest, there was a lot of kids that told me their stories and had never told anyone before. And there's Kenyan men especially don't cry.
Yeah.
And so when you've got an 18-year-old guy telling you his story of how he ended up at Huruma, the children's home, and the situation of what led him to that place, and he's in tears, that's a significant thing. That that level of trust that's built to be able to get to the point of someone telling their story for the very first time is such a significant thing. And I'm not going to cry.
You are more than welcome to cry.
Yeah, that's just something that I'll never forget.
Yeah.
It's really significant. And yeah. But at the home there are about 16 children that are living with HIV at the moment. One of the most significant days of the trip was the day that we went to the HIV clinic with these students. The clinic itself is in Kibera. So if you know anything about Africa, Kibera is one of the biggest slums in Africa, houses over 1 million people. And as I said, corrugated iron homes, limited access to clean water. There's no kind of rubbish disposal other than the rubbish being burnt, which is pretty common in Kenya. So it was a really significant day anyway. But yeah, then one of the children told me her story, and she obviously has HIV. When her stepfather found out that she had HIV as a young child, he threw battery acid all over her.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to kill her. And so she's now quite disfigured. And has scars on her face and her body, but is, again, one of the most beautiful, kind, loving girls that I've ever met. And so again, you hear these stories and you see the person that's in front of you, and you find it hard to find that connection. It's almost like the stories are so significant and so raw that it's really hard in the moment to comprehend it. I can't comprehend someone feeling like that's an appropriate response at all. So, that's one of hundreds of stories. There's stories of abandonment. There's a small child, a baby, under the age of 1 that's at the home at the moment that I believe was born in a forest and left in the forest.
Wow.
And how that child wasn't eaten by hyenas, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Surely by the grace of God or something, a small child, abandonment, abuse of a physical variety. There's, step-parents, parents, all kinds of different family members and close people who just take advantage of situations. And then obviously sexual abuse as well, which is quite significant. So every child has a story. Not all of them sound the same. Not all of them are as horrific, but every child has a story. And once you start to hear some of the stories and connect with these kids, it's pretty hard not to fall in love with them. But then again, we all have a story, right? We've all got our stories, and they're not going to look the same, but they're significant.
Yeah.
and they're ours. And one of the things that is really beautiful about the African culture is that vulnerability and that willingness to share. And I would love to see that be a thing here too. You know?
Do you think it's changing?
I think it is, slowly. I don't know, it is in the circles that I run in, which is really good because I love sharing. I love talking about this kind of stuff. I love talking about people's experiences and getting to know them better, because I feel like I can't do surface level anymore. It's not enough. It's not enough for me. I mean, and there'll always be people that you don't go to that deeper place with, but for me, I want to find those deep-spirited friends, those friendships where people can call you out on your bullshit because they know you, because they know your story, and yeah, I think it is changing, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
100%. I think if those circles that share, or that people are vulnerable and that they share things and share their fears and desires and hopes and dreams and all that kind of stuff, then all you're going to do by showing that vulnerability is attract other people that want to show that.
Yeah.
You know, that whole surface level thing, the small talk thing, like I get it. I think I feel the same way a lot of the time, and I think it's, you know, it's important to be able to be polite and have a conversation with someone, but at the same time, you know, if you spend your whole week talking about the weather, you're going to get to the end of the week and nothing's changed.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to be able to learn through experiences of other people and experiences of yourself. But then, like you said, if you're able to have these conversations, if you're able to put it all out in a journal, then it helps you process it.
Yeah.
And that vulnerability is something that I've noticed myself and staff and clients and the Virtus family, the people, when they are vulnerable, like those barriers that they've either put in front of themselves or imagined in front of themselves, they tend to crumble away pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just for you, it's for other people too. Yeah. That freedom and permission you give other people to be unapologetically themselves is so significant. I think I spent too long calling myself an emotional person. I'm so emotional, and saw that as such a negative thing. It was like that switch of going like, yeah, I'm emotional, but I'm passionate, and emotional doesn't have to mean crying. Like, I cry all the time. I cry. If I'm not between a 4 and a 7 on the emotional scale, I'm crying.
Yeah.
I'm crying when I'm happy, I'm crying when I'm sad. But I think when we can kind of be vulnerable enough with ourselves and with other people, it gives them permission to do the same. And I think only good can come of that.
Yeah, 100%. What are the things that, I guess you talked about the circles that you run in. What are those circles, and how have you found them to be beneficial in terms of like finding your people?
Yeah, I think they've changed a bit, but also not at the same time. So I probably have like a core group of friends who have kind of been around for the last maybe 10 plus years. And they're easy friendships. Like, these are deep friendships, but they're easy. So I'm not going to list them all, but for the ones that you do know, like Sam and Eliza have been, and the twins, have been such a significant part of my life for the last 10 plus years.
Yeah.
They're people that are like no bullshit, no judgment type friends. Like, I could turn up to their house at 4 o'clock in the morning being an absolute mess and they would just be completely fine with it. They're people that like are with me and celebrating the wins, but also in the trenches with me when I'm, struggling and need a comrade. And knowing that you've got that is almost enough. Like, even when you're not experiencing the crap stuff, knowing that you've got those people around you is such a significant thing. I think now as I'm an adult and processing what friendships look like, it's less about quantity and more about quality. Like, I want good people in my life. I don't care if I have, a tiny group of friends. If they're the right people for me, I'm about it, and that's enough for me. But I think it's also about finding the communities that aren't just based around friendships. So like, without giving you too much of a big head, Virtus has been really significant for me because it's a different community outside of the one that's been, that 10 plus years. It's fresh, it's different, but it's also fulfilling purpose in another aspect as well. So Virtus kind of came along at a time where there needed to be a change in my life in a physical aspect, but I also didn't realise how much the kind of community side of it was needed as well, something fresh and different in that aspect. And so that's been a really significant addition to my world.
Awesome.
As well. I mean, I sent you that text message the other day, like...
Made me feel warm, fuzzy and stuff.
I'm so glad. That's what it's about, right? After 4.5 months in Kenya and building the community and the relationships that I built there, like, man, I've been struggling so hard since being back because it was such a significant time. But then knowing that I had like a Virtus to come back to where it's a different community, but it's community nonetheless, has been really awesome, and it's made that adjustment less painful. Yeah, maybe not less painful, but it's easier. Yeah.
Definitely. Talk to me about that 4.5 months, because it wasn't planned as 4.5 months initially, right?
Yeah. So I planned to go over to Kenya this year, 2018, for 3 months. And the 3 months that I was going to spend there had a purpose. So it was going to be 3 months of using my skill set and my passions and abilities to help Huruma tell their story. So my background is administration and a bit of marketing. So I would work with their office team as well, obviously, as well as spending time with the kids, which was super high priority for me, was to spend time in the office with their office team and kind of help them engage in social media, the use of like newsletters and whatnot to be able to tell their story, which was awesome. So we did that for 3 months. It was really significant. We were able to get a whole bunch of new supporters for the home. There was people from overseas who were, wanting to donate. It came at a really significant time for the home. They were really struggling financially just because of some American sponsors who were changing how they were doing things.
Yeah.
We were, through the use of, we set them up on MailChimp. They were initially sending a Word document as an attachment for their newsletter, which was crazy. But we set them up on an e-newsletter. We started doing some more videos, told some of the stories of the kids, showed the home more, talked to Mama Zipporah, who again is the most incredible woman that I know. Shout out to Mama Zip. And then from that, Kenyans would come with what they had. This is the other thing, right? Generosity. Kenyans that would come in massive groups and give what they had, whether it was clothes, whether it was a bag of rice, whether it was, hundreds of dollars worth of food. They would come with what they had because they saw a need.
Yeah.
Again, that's something to think about for us Westerners. What are we doing when we see the needs of the people around us? And it was really significant, the 3 months that we were doing that. But then as my D-Day for going home approached, I just didn't feel ready. And I was like, is this just because I know I'll miss everyone?
Yeah.
Is this just because, that it's sad to leave? But I just couldn't shake the fact that I didn't think I was meant to go home. So I was processing what that looked like and talking to a couple of other volunteers that were there at the time and Mama Zipporah. And we figured out that when I left, there would be, even though I was training up someone to do the stuff that I was doing, we recognised that there would still be a bit of a significant gap. And what I was setting up wasn't as sustainable as it could be. Anyway, long story short is we kind of came up with a plan and I created an idea that I pitched to Mama for a social media internship that would be directed at one of the graduating students of the Year 12s.
Yeah.
At a student who isn't necessarily strong academically, but is creative, is good with technology, is able to tell a story. Let's use those skills, train them up to be able to step into a paid position in 2019 that they can partner with the home in this internship and continue the work that we've been doing the 3 months before. So we created the Huruma social media internship, and that's why I stuck around for an extra month and a half to be able to spend one-on-one time training up the social media intern, which is so good because, he's incredible. His name's David, he's funny, he's cheeky, he's really good at what he does, and he will be able to tell the Huruma story better than anyone, having lived there, been there, breathed it in, so that's that.
What was it like having the first couple of months, obviously you're not out of the community for that last month and a half, but obviously the first couple of months was heavily based around the community and immersing yourself and being a part of that and helping in a wider range, and then going to kind of one person and mentoring for that last month and a half. What was it like with that shift? Did it change perspective or thought patterns or anything like that?
Not Not really. I mean, the person that we selected for the role, there was a process in that anyway, but this person that ended up being selected was probably someone that I'd already built a really strong connection with, which, was so good. It was so good to be able to be like, yeah, I know you, I know your skills, we have a friendship already, and we just believe in you. So we're able to just completely invest in him.
Yeah.
It was easy. It felt really natural and it felt really easy, and it was really enjoyable. Like, we made it fun. Like, we were able to go around and film the kids singing Merry Christmas and Joy to the World, and, getting ready for Christmas stuff. And we were able to go out and take photos in Gong, the local town, and, share a meal together. And he became like a best friend. Like, I FaceTimed him for an hour last night. Like, how good's technology? I don't know what we did before, being able to just FaceTime people from around the world. It was hard in the sense of, the community and the friendships that I was building. It's not that they became secondary, but the focus for that month and a half was David.
Yeah.
And so some of the younger ones saw me a little bit less, and that was hard for them. But whenever I was available, I was with the kids. As soon as we were done with training for the day, it was like out playing soccer with the kids. And,
awesome.
I taught them Baby Shark, and every time I'd step out of the guest house, little Zipporah would say, Brookside, Baby Shark, Baby Shark. And I just had to tell her, no, Baby Shark's sleeping. I can't deal with Baby Shark anymore. Baby Shark is asleep. But yeah, it was really good.
I think coming back, obviously you'd had these last maybe 12 months kind of experiencing Kenya for the first time, coming back and basically straight away going, this is what I'm going to be doing. Having 8 months to work and look forward to something. What was it like coming back, and how did you prepare for, I guess, your re-entry into this part of the world?
Mate, it's been so hard. Like, I've been back for a week now, and I'm still figuring it out. And it's partly still jet lag, but it's also partly because, oh man, I just miss it. I miss it so much. Like I said, if someone was to give me a chunk of money, I'd be back on a plane stat.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I'm trying to figure it out. I have an incredible job to step into this year, which I'm so excited about. I have an awesome new home that I'm in at the moment. But my God, my heart's still in the Gong Hills. Like, I can't shake it. And so it's figuring out...
It's been a week, mate.
I know.
And it's probably never going to not be there.
Right. And this is what I said. Like, it's being kind enough to myself to go like, okay, there is going to be a grief process. And I probably wasn't aware of how much it would affect me being back. Because I knew all the things I've got to look forward to, like Christmas and summer, if the sun wants to come out, New Year's and the new job and all of that kind of stuff. There's so much good stuff happening. I just probably thought that would overshadow the grief of leaving, but it's significant. How I feel right now is significant, and it won't always feel like this, I hope, but there'll always be something there. And as I said, this is something I feel is a lifelong partnership, and it won't always look like living in Kenya. Sometimes it will look like being a pen pal or FaceTiming, or sponsoring a child or whatever it might be. But it's a lifelong partnership. And as I continue to kind of grieve not being present with that community, it's just being kind to myself in the process, which I'm aware of. But
being aware of and then being able to feel it and act upon it and believe it is the two different, four different things. Like,
my house at the moment is just filled with African music. I'm waiting for the chance for me to chuck on my African playlist at Virtus and just just any opportunity to be able to talk about it and continue to process it. Yeah, I know Mitch is like, oh, did you go to Africa? Did you go to Kenya? It's like, yes, and let me talk about it for the next 6 months.
That's a joke that started when Coop went to the UK, which apparently Coop went to the UK for a while.
Oh, did he?
He's been bringing it up for the last 12, 18 months. Mitch went to the US as well. We're pretty aware of that.
Did he watch a baseball game?
Mate, he turned into a baseball. I guess, is it difficult because all you would want to talk about, I'm sure, is Kenya, right? Yeah, you'd want to process and help other people experience it through you and all these different things. Is it hard to kind of like, not that you need to, but is it hard to like bite your tongue and kind of go, okay, well maybe people don't want to hear about it every minute of every day?
Yeah, it is, but I'm super aware of it. So not everyone wants to hear about it, and not everyone, even when they do want to hear about it, people don't understand. They'll try to, but they, they'll mean so well, but they won't understand because, they weren't there. They didn't live it and breathe it and smell it.
That's a good point for everyone's experiences and problems and struggles ever, I think.
It's being able to, listen and try to understand, but having that knowledge that no one's going to get it 100%. But for me, I'm so lucky. So for both trips, my mum was there for a period of time. So while I was there for the 4.5 months, my mum came with a team of people. Yeah. One of whom is one of my very good friends, Sophie. I'm looking for excuses to hit the bell now. And so I've got good people who have been there and understand. And if I didn't have that, I would find it really hard. I'm still finding it really hard, but yeah, it's easier knowing that there's people that have been there and done it, maybe not for 4.5 months, but know the community and are happy to look at photos and hear how I'm feeling. And but it's still hard. It's still really hard. It's almost like I want people to understand because, this is something that's significant to me. And so having other people understand that is cool, but at the same time, not everyone's going to be as passionate about the orphans and widows in Africa as they are about animals or, and we need people passionate about all different things.
100%. I think it's really important to never, trying to put a dampener or put something over the top of your passion and what you're actually really passionate about. Like, whether it is single-use plastics or whether it's, what you're passionate about, whether it's what I'm passionate about, if you can find that thing that, I use the term, set your soul on fire and give it out to the world, then like carry on. If you haven't found that thing, keep looking because you'll get there eventually.
And encouraging people to pursue that, whatever it is for them. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that yours is more significant or less significant than anyone else's. It's just different. But I think it's like we was talking about before, once you find that thing for you, like pursue it with everything that you have. And that's not only good for the community that you're partnering with, but it's good for you. Yeah. Takes your eyes off yourself and your own little bubble and into the, the needs that our world has. And I think only good can come from that.
100%. Tell me about your parents.
They are actually the best people that I know. I know, like, people have different relationships with their parents and whatnot, but, like, in all honesty, my parents are probably the coolest parents that exist. So, I've always been really close with my parents. I've grown up maybe in a different environment than most people. So my dad is a pastor of a church. So I grew up in a pretty Christian background. They walked through the first church we went to with me as a baby in their arms, and we didn't leave that particular church until I was about 17 years old. Yep. So yeah, I've always kind of had a really cool grounding in like morals and encouragement and love, like such a loving family. But now as an adult, like being able to choose how that relationship looks with my family is so significant. My dad is one of my best mates. Like I made him change the dates of when he was playing. My parents are moving interstate, which is again going to be so significantly hard, but made Dad change the dates he's moving so we could have a last Boxing Day test together, watch the cricket, amazing, sink a few frothies and just enjoy the day. But yeah, we just get along so well. My parents are staying with me at the moment before they move, and I know that they would do anything for me. They're my biggest supporters and always have been. There's never a time where I felt like I haven't made my parents proud. Even when I've been a little shit and made really poor choices, I've never questioned their love for me, which again has been such a significant part of just feeling released to make choices, whether good, bad or ugly. I know that I've always got a good family behind me.
I love that.
Yeah.
How's your, growing up in a Christian household, how's your faith affected who you are and who you've become and who you're becoming?
I would say that for like, I was all about it for my younger years. I think it's like, there gets to a point, if you've grown up in a religious, I don't like that word, if you've grown up in like a Christian family, there gets a point in your life where you're like, this needs to be mine. If this is true, if I believe this to be truth, it needs to not be something that has been taught to me by whoever, my family, whatever. Yeah. It needs to become a choice that I've made. And probably like I went through a good few years of rebellion in my like late teens, early 20s, which like more often than not, tell you what, pastors' kids, they're a crazy bunch. Yeah, and so where I was like, this is bullshit, like I don't know what I believe, I don't know where it all sits, like a bit of rebellion against what my parents believed.
Yeah.
But I think it was more, I would say that like I've always had a faith and always had a belief in God, and like always loved the person of who Jesus is and the Bible and stuff, and the way that he lived his life was all about other people. And so that was really significant for me, as far as like someone of character. But it wasn't until I had my massive breakdown that I was like, it needs to be less about what I believe in my head and more about how I'm living my life. And this needs to become like a significant action as opposed to just a belief. And so it's always been something that's there and something that I'm passionate about. But I think post the breakdown, I was like, yeah, this is a reality for me. And it's not just going to be about something that makes me feel good and warm and fuzzy. It's going to be something that's going to change my lifestyle. And yeah, I think since then, it's probably something that's been kind of setting my soul on fire, and increased passion for people and a kindness for myself. And I would say faith is definitely something that gives my life purpose. I don't think that I could have done the last season that I did in Kenya and hearing the stories that I did without, and seeing the way that they live their life. Like Huruma is such a significant place of faith, and I look at these kids, and if they didn't have that faith grounding or that something to believe in, I would hate to think of where their life would be. Because I think that, we talk about how healing and having that space to process is really significant for resilience. I believe that absolutely is true, but I think especially in this community, having that faith is significant for healing and is significant for resilience and significant for joy. So I would rock up to their Sunday services at the church, and like I've never seen kids jump like they've jumped. Like there is a deep joy that comes out when they just are, being free in what they believe, and it's a really beautiful thing. So I'm constantly challenged by what I believe, like especially in the climate of where we live, in the time that we live at the moment, and all the questions. I have more questions than answers. I'm okay in that space. Even as someone that's kind of grown up in the faith, I continually have questions, and I continually, have very heated conversations with God and other people around like what I believe and why I believe what I believe. And there was a time where I didn't ask questions, and that was really unhealthy. But I think as long as we're asking questions, even if they're really tough and even if we don't have the answers, I think that's a really healthy space to be.
I like that. It's cool. I have 3 questions for you to finish off. Mm-hmm. What are you proud of?
I'm proud of myself. And that sounds real cheesy and probably maybe a little bit cocky. But my God, it's taken me a long time to be able to say that and say that confidently. I am so proud of who I am. I don't want to get emotional again. That's such a weird thing to get emotional about.
No, it's not.
But like the last few years have been the most devastating and the most beautiful of my life. And I just feel really proud of the fact that I just didn't give up. When everything in me was telling me to give up, I'm just really glad that I didn't. And I'm proud of that.
I love that. Those 2 words don't have to be opposing things, I think.
Not at all. And it's, I'll leave it there.
Twice. What are you confident about? What are you most confident about?
I'm so confident that this world is full of beauty and is full of beautiful people and beautiful things. And after coming back from Kenya, like, even more so than ever before, you know, after seeing tough stuff, you also see the beauty behind it as well. I'm fully confident that this world is beautiful, and there are incredible people here, and I'm confident that that will continue to be the case as we take our eyes off ourselves and look to others.
Good answer. What are you most excited for?
2019. I feel like every year since 2017, after that significant time in my life in 2016, every year for me has gotten bigger and better, and I just have such high hopes for 2019 for myself, for my community, and just in general. 2019 is going to be a really big and awesome year, and I say bring it on.
Awesome. Got another question. I couldn't finish at 3. What? So one of the things you said to me early on was you had to discern between Old Brooke and New Brooke, right? And I thought it was really powerful. So if Old Brooke was sitting in the position I am now, and you're looking across the table at Old Brooke, what would you say to her?
Oh, that's a really big question. I would just say you're worth it. You're worth pushing through. You're worth investing in. You are worth taking the time. And you are so much greater and so much less significant than you realise. Like, it's that paradox of being so significantly insignificant, right? Which is...
I love having that conversation with people because I think meaning comes from our significant lack of meaning.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was probably like the most frustrating thing, but it was so significant. Like, I'm everything, but I am nothing. And it was when I kind of started to wrap my head around that things changed. But I would just say, poor little Brooke, like, take your eyes off the ground, be confident in who you are, and, you know, hold your head up high, walk with confidence, and just you wait,
Yeah.
Stick it out and just watch what happens. Your life is about to be set on fire in the most significant way, and it's not because of anything you've done, it's not because of anything that you are, it's just because it is what it is. And as we continue to, you know, walk through life and make choices that will bring us joy and bring others joy, it's significant. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for having a chat. And thanks for sharing.
Oh, my pleasure. Let's do it again sometime.
100%. How can people get around Huruma? How can people find a sponsored child? How can people start to see and experience in smaller ways the world that you have experienced?
Awesome. So I would love to talk about it, but if you wanted to just jump online and check it out, Huruma Children's Home is on Facebook, as well as my mum's organisation that organises the child sponsorship. So that's Go Beyond All Borders. Both have websites and both are on Facebook. Otherwise, I'm always up for a coffee and a chat.
Good. Brooke, thanks again.
Thanks, Lockie.